So you will see here, and a little disclaimer right off the bat, in order to bring you this training, okay, you're seeing this banner across the street. I'm on a staging environment. So what we've done is since things like hit counters and reverse prospecting, they're only available if you have a live active listing. We've pulled in some listings just for privacy reasons. We pulled in some old ones from 2018, kind of played around with the numbers on the testing environment here so that we can bring you this training. Okay, so just bear in mind that I am on a staging environment, but it's going to look exactly like your system when you're looking at your active listings. Okay, if you have active listings, you can feel free to follow along on your own, kind of so that you can compare the numbers and stuff like that. But I did put something together here just as a test. You'll see what I mean in a few steps. Okay, really three main topics that we're going to be discussing over the next between now and about 2 p.m. Okay, first of all, we're going to jump into our portal notification settings. So we're going to go over a whole bunch of details as far as those settings. They are settings that are off by default, so really important to put those on, and we're going to discuss kind of why that is and what they look like on the two sides. So portal notification settings is our first topic. Following that one, we're going to jump into an active listing where we will talk about all of the numbers that relate to hit counters. So that's really more directly how your listing is performing on the market. We're going to discuss, understand that screen. There's a lot of kind of random numbers on it. So we want to make a little bit of sense of what those are referring to. And then we're going to tie in right after that into reverse prospecting, where all three topics kind of come together, coming up with a bit of a marketing strategy, how we can be proactive. That would be all three of them. So portal notifications, hit counters, reverse prospecting. And we're going to go in that order, of course. If you are following along on your own system, feel free to just open up Matrix and jump onto your dashboard, which is what I have open here. In order to track down your portal notification settings, it is something that happens in your My Matrix menu. So if I was to hover over the My Matrix here and just make my way down to settings, this is where I'm going to find these portal notification settings. Okay, so if you haven't activated these just yet, you do have to scroll down this screen. I've zoomed in quite a bit just so everybody can see what I'm working on here. But right here, portal notification settings. So I'll just show one more time how I got there. My Matrix, click on settings, scroll down the list, and it's the second last one, portal notification settings. Okay, what this chart is basically telling me is how do I, as a realtor, how do I get notified when my clients are interacting with their portal? Okay, so when my client is visiting an auto email, or if I sent a listing out to my client, I can get notified when they actually go in and have a look at the property that I've sent them, right? Whether it's just a single, maybe it's multiple listings that I sent, or even in the case of an auto email that I set up for them. Okay, so if you'd like to be notified for the different interactions that they have with their portal, very, very good and important actually to come in here and activate these if you haven't already. Okay, you can put a check mark on as many as you like here. Even a lot of the major carriers will let you do even a text message service if you want that. Please, like, select as much as you'd like. I'm going to focus on the 4 that I've selected. So saving a favorite, a possibility, discarding a listing, and adding a note. Okay, these are the main important ones that I would at least put these 4 on. I feel like these are crucial. If not, all of them can even be crucial if you want to be notified of just about everything. Okay. When you've selected the ones you like, you just hit the save option and it will update. Just because I'm on a staging environment, I'm not going to make any changes here, but just know that you do have to save at the bottom of the form. So let's talk about these a little bit more, however. Okay, what is a favorite, right? What is a possibility? Where is my client putting in a note? Where does this happen? Okay, as I mentioned, it's something, it's the way that your client is interacting with their auto email or the portal that you've set up for them, right? So in this case, I just had our IT manager, Brian. He kind of, in this case, think of Brian as my buyer representation. And in this case, Eric, myself, is just a buyer in the market. Okay, so Brian set me up on an auto email and we have this portal. Okay, I'll just click on this link here to view the listings. And what we would end up with, of course, is the auto email that your client would be looking at. So I'll make this a little bit larger on screen here. Let's see. Okay, so with this, right, I could see that Brian has a bit of a display picture. He chose the image and the kind of the branding that he went with. Okay, I get to see that in this case, at this time, this auto email has 4 listings in total. A new one got added on pretty recently. These are all actually newer ones since the last time I've looked at it, to be honest. It was probably a couple weeks ago that I jumped in here last time. But yeah, let's go ahead and have a closer look here at some of the ways that our clients are interacting with auto emails. And the first one is right here. As you see, every single listing has a bit of a heart at the top right-hand corner. Well, when you click on that, your client has the option to either save a favorite, save as a possibility, or discard if they're just not interested in the property for any reason, right? Well, if I discard a listing right now, how is Brian going to know that I'm not interested, and how is he going to, find out why I wasn't interested, right? Unless I reach out or I leave a note. So that's where those notification settings can be really, really crucial to keep, timely open lines of communication between yourself and your client. You know how they're interacting, and you can kind of react to that and communicate with them immediately when you see them do something like that. Let's jump into, I'm going to go with this one because it looks pretty nice. I kind of wish that I had a pool, not going to lie. So let's just go with this one. And you'll notice as soon as you go into the property itself, just as normal, right? We get to see the public remarks, property information, map, all the images. So this is what your client would be seeing, of course, in the sense of an auto email. Here's that 4th section, if you remember. Not only those 3 that we had from this heart, the 4th one that I wanted to talk about, of course, is this adding a note, right? If I was to say, hey, Brian, I really like this property. When could we arrange a showing, right? If I go and I type something like this, and I'm expecting Brian to respond to me, well, if I add this note, this is just personal between myself and Brian, not something that the listing agent would see. But if I left a note on here, right, I'm expecting a response from Brian. Well, that's where these are really, really important, right? If Brian does not have the note activated, he might not see that for a good while, right? Maybe next week he's like, wow, I haven't heard back from Eric for a while. Maybe I'll jump into his auto email and have a look at what he's seeing. Has he, right? Like having this activated would tell him straight away, he'd get an email that I left a note, he'd have information about it, and then he can get a hold of me and answer my question, and we can move forward, right? So these notification settings are extremely, extremely important. To tell you the truth, I'm not sure why they're all off. I wish that they were just activated from the beginning, but you do have to go in and manually set these to your preferences and then hit save. Okay, so that one was adding a note that we just saw. I'll just talk really briefly about these 3. I know I said a few words about discarding a listing. Something I'll bring your attention is just bear in mind that on Matrix, there's a red heart when it's a favorite, and it's actually like a little epiphany. It's a little light bulb when it's a possibility. Okay, so let's, geez, where did I end up with that one? I guess it's right here. Okay, so you'll notice if your client does choose to save this as a favorite for any reason, they're really showing genuine interest in the property in this case, well, they would activate it here. If I activate my notification, I would know straight away when they've done something like that to a specific property, right? Possibility, remember this one refers to the little light bulb. And then discarding would be completely getting rid of this one. Maybe for any reason, hey, you know what, maybe the house is too big, let's take that one off the list, way out of my price range kind of thing. Well, I can discard it, right? But then it would take Brian a little investigating to find out why I got rid of it. So he's got to be notified why I discarded it, for example. Okay. So let's get that one off screen. Okay. So again, puts those important ones. I think the top four that I think are most important to activate at the very least: favorite, possibility, discarding, and adding notes. Okay. I'm just going to click on these real quick. I'll show you one more place where these show up. A couple different things that we're going to talk about in the contacts section. But here on the My Matrix, if you go to your My Matrix and then contacts, you'll notice that it does give you a bit of a summary of those icons as well. Okay. So if you remember, the first one that we did was My Matrix settings, followed by portal notification settings. Well, another way that you can have an idea and maybe gauge how your contact is interacting is from this little chart here. This is right inside of your contacts, because of course, to send an auto email, you first had to create a contact anyways, but it does give you a little chart. The only thing is, this chart doesn't have anything to do with notifying me, right? Like, I wouldn't have gotten an email for all 21 discards from the MLS department that's been set up here as a test, right? Unless the actual portal notification setting has been activated, right? I would just see the 21. But I mean, at least this screen gives you a bit of a summary. You can see how these contacts are interacting with the portals that they have available to them, the portals that we set up for them. Okay, so that's in contacts. And a couple of things we're going to talk about in here, of course, as soon as we jump into more of the hit counters, because that's going to come up again. But yeah, really, really important. Make your way here. Definitely activate all the ones that are going to apply to your business. Really, really, really crucial to do that. And that does wrap up our very first topic here, okay, being portal notification settings. I'm just going to close up this little email. This was the auto email that we generated. Let's close that up. Let's make this a bit bigger. Perfect. So again, the next place we're going to go is, it looks like today we're going to spend a lot of time in this My Matrix section. So as you're seeing already, right, being that it's a more advanced setup here, I'm going with the assumption that you do have some background knowledge of Matrix. I know I jumped the gun right before saying it, but you do need to have some background and understanding of how an auto email is created. Spend some time creating that. Maybe set yourself as the contact for the auto email, so you can get familiar, just like what I did. Open up a test one, see what your client sees, so you can understand how those notifications work. Okay. In this case, we're now going to go to that part where we need active listings for. Okay, so I'm going to go to my listings section. So My Matrix, My Listings. Okay, you'll notice that by default, it'll probably put you on something like the My Incoming Listings, unless you've chosen one in the list recently. But where I'm going to go in this case is My Hit Counters. So in this case, once again, My Matrix, My Listings, and then My Hit Counters would be the next step. And let's absolutely break down what in the world this chart is trying to tell us. Okay, this is the beginning stages of starting to understand how your listing is performing on the MLS system. Okay, telling us things like how many views, right? How many agents created auto emails for their clients. So let's actually go from left to right. We'll break down what these numbers refer to, how these numbers get kind of added up, and then we'll go from there before we go into this final ticket item of reverse prospecting. Okay. So right now, as you see, we're just on a staging environment. These are all listings that were previously active in 2018. We just kind of changed them up a little bit on the staging environment so that we can have something to show. Okay. You'll notice all the way out to kind of, definitely go left to right in talking about these different columns. So what you're noticing so far is technically that we have, in this case, it would be as if you're looking at your own account, and let's assume that you have 6 active status listings up on the market. Okay, so just being from Sylvan Forest right all the way down here, these Okay, maybe this one is kind of a lease version of this single family one that's for sale, things like that. But we do have 6 that are technically active here. So the first little bit, pretty straightforward. We have our MLS number, right? The status, the type, address, price. As soon as we get into these numbers to the right, this is really what I want to get down to. Let's understand a little bit more about what's going on here. So you heard me already talking about portal notification settings, clients that have portals that we set up for them. Okay, well, you can actually see for your own listing that you have on the MLS system, you can see how many portals have been set up for clients out there, right? If I see a number here like 12, well, it means that there's 12 portals that had been created. These are 12 individual, either 12 individual real estate agents or 12 kind of members that created portals for their clients. Okay, and perhaps the same real estate agent maybe created a portal, could have sent it to 2 or 3 different contacts on their list. That we're going to talk to. We're going to jump into there and look at that a little bit further, of course. But there's currently 12 portals out there that include our property as one of the listings in that portal. Okay, and you can actually tell, start to determine a bit of information from that. Okay, you'll notice here, I'm going to tie up client portals a little bit with auto emails. Okay, so let's kind of consider these two at the same time, in the sense that if you remember, you can create portals in different ways. You can create a portal if you're just sending out a single listing via email. Perhaps you're sending 2 or 3 listings at a time to a client. That would just be like a simple email, send out the information. Well, your client would view it in a bit of a portal, okay? The other difference here is if it is set up as an auto email, like a full auto email that's interactive, as things meet the criteria, they get sent through to the client portal, right? Well, they have kind of differentiated this list a little bit, and you could see how many of them refer to each of them, right? So in this case, for 118 Forsyth, we've got 11 different portals that our property is a part of, and 9 of those, in fact, are auto emails. The other 2, I would assume, were just more simply emailed to a client or emailed with a couple other listings, whatever the case may be. Okay, so it tells you how many portals your listing is a part of. It also shows you different views. So I'll go to the side a bit here. Okay, so we have client views here, and we also have agent views. A couple other ones here as well. How many views happened in the last 7 days? How many views happened collectively in actually the last 14 days? But I'll talk more about the just kind of agent views and client views really briefly here. And there's one really important distinction to make. When we're talking about views on the MLS system, it's just really important to understand that views are not unique. Okay, what that means is if I go in and I look at a particular listing, and then at half an hour later, I look at it again, I look at it 15 minutes later, I look at it an hour later, I might end up looking at it 5 times throughout the day as I'm considering information and comparing it to different property, right? So what would happen is this number would go up by 5, okay? It doesn't mean that exactly 90 individual agents have viewed our commercial listing here. If I drawing a blank as I stumble over my words here, but if there can be, right, it might have been just 45 different agents. Technically, they could have all viewed it 2 times, type of thing. Just understand that views, whenever you're seeing views in this column, it's just not a unique number, okay? It is technically possible that the same client looked at our property 15 times. It's not very likely, but that could technically happen. Okay, so just bear that in mind when you're making use of these numbers. Of course, if you have some active listings, you'd be able to see how yours is performing. probably performing better than our test environment. These are all kind of a little bit made up type of thing, but this is kind of more like a 2018 snippet that we're looking at. Okay. If we have a look at, yeah, well, for example, if we have a look at the fact that there's actually 28 client portals that were sent out to individuals that are looking at properties, well, if there's only 15 views, we can kind of start to determine that, you know, not every one of those clients actually opened up and viewed it in their portal, for example, right? It looks like only about half of them are kind of jumping in with the way that we're kind of looking at our numbers here. In the case here where 8 portals were set up and actually only 2 views came of it, right? But you can start to gauge a bit of how that's performing. These next 2 columns here, client favorites and client possibilities, these ones actually refer to how the potential buyers that are these clients, right, how they interact with the portal in that very same way that we talked about in the notifications, right? If I was to hit this favorite button, well, for that 2496 Rideau, whoever the listing agent is, well, they would get a little 1 that would pop up here. I am anonymous, right? They wouldn't be able to tell who favorited the property, but you can actually see, you know, how many clients that are interacting with their portal, whether they are actually favoriting or setting your property as a possibility for any reason. Okay, so these are very, very important numbers. We just threw 1 in here so that we can bring it up for discussion in reverse prospecting, which we'll do shortly. But we're definitely going to come back to more info about these 2 columns. This one refers to the heart, the red heart, sorry, and then this one refers to either the yellow heart or the little yellow light bulb. So client possibilities. All has to do with how they interact with the particular portals that they've been sent. Okay. We've already spoken about this one. This is just the breakdown of how many are in fact auto emails. When it comes to views, okay, you do want to just look at these like, hey, more of a snippet in time. Perhaps if we look at this one, right, perhaps my single family listing for Sylvan Forest Drive, maybe it's been on the market for the last 18 days, right? Well, I'd be able to see that out of those last 18 days, the most recent 14 days brought in 7 views, and the most recent 7 days brought in 3 views. So more just like a quick glimpse at this week and last week, or however you want to look at it. It's the most recent 14 days, and you can get an idea of how many of the views generated came from that. If you're noticing that the numbers are the same, then it's more of the indication that maybe the listing has not been up for longer than 7 days, right? If the listing's only been active for 3 days, well, it'll show the same number in both because it hasn't ticked into 14 yet. It will just show the same number in that case, okay? Out of this whole chart, these 2 numbers, agent published and agent rejected, would be the ones that I disregard these almost every time, okay? And I'll tell you why. I really wouldn't put a lot of bearing on these 2 columns, and the whole reason for that, if you think about an auto email, right? If you remember when we went over creating an auto email on Monday, well, an option that you have is enabling concierge mode. That is a feature that lets you either publish or reject the listing before it hits your client's portal, just so that you can manage it a bit better in case there is something you're trying to like weed out manually. Maybe that property coming through just isn't the right square footage. You want to handle that manually. Well, you might reject it instead of that automatically reaching your client, and then they just see a property they're not going to go for anyways. Well, these 2 columns refer to that action of concierge mode. It's just whether the agent that activated concierge mode, when our property hit that agent, did they publish it, which was sending it to their client, or did they reject it so that it did not go through to their client? That's all these 2 columns are. However, you just have no idea what the reason may be. right? It could be anything, and it might not be something negative about your property. It could really just be something based on preference for the client. So I wouldn't put too much bearing on this. We have no background for why the agent published it or rejected it. I kind of look past these. I don't put too much bearing on them. Make the decision for yourself, but I think that without the right context, these are a little bit irrelevant. Okay. Bring in our final column here, agent views, very similar to client views, just shows us how many times our property's been clicked on, more so in the MLS system. So somebody that has access to Matrix, more how many agents actually click on them. Here you could see how many, from the number 235 views. Well, it looks like quite a few agents that viewed this property were actually interested in setting up an actual portal for their client. This seems like almost 50%, right? Seems very significant. Where here we have like 200 views almost, and there were only 12 portals created, right? So looks like we can gauge that there's a lot more immediate interest in this single family residence than Cumberland Avenue, for example. Okay, things you can kind of determine for yourself really quick, but just remember, not a unique number. If the same agent views it 5 times in a day, the number will go up by 5. Okay, and that does wrap up just this chart here. All the different kind of types of a little bit of statistics that you get for how your listing is performing on the market. Okay, right in your hit counters section. So if you remember getting here to this chart, go to your My Matrix. It refers to your My Listing section. It usually defaults to bringing you to your incoming listings. So you just select My Hit Counters, and then right away you get this chart, and you can start to have an idea of how many interactions are happening with your active listings. Okay, but you do have to have an active listing to see this information. Okay. Now that we have a better understanding of those things that are on this hit counters list, let's definitely make our way into the final topic, which is reverse prospecting. We're going to start to use some of these numbers with the end goal of kind of actioning it and maybe reaching out to one of these agents, right? Because this is 111 different agents. This is 12 different interactions that an agent had with their client. Well, maybe we can use that information, and there might be an opportunity there. Okay, so that's what we're gonna go in with that idea as we jump into reverse prospecting. Okay, so you'll see as I hover over this, right? Everything is grayed out. I don't have options just yet. When you hover over it, it tells us you must check at least one item. Okay, all that means is you do have to select one. You'll notice as soon as you select an option in this list, right, it makes them blue. They are now available. So it's like if I want to do reverse prospecting for a particular property, I do have to select which one. So maybe we'll do Cumberland Avenue in this case, just because it might be a lot easier for now to explain the number of interactions here rather than 111. We're going to have a look at Sylvan Forest in a second for sure, but let's start on one of the lower ones. Actually, you know what? Maybe I'll go with North Service Road. Why not? Let's go with this one. Okay. So the way to go into reverse prospecting, you can either select it and then click on reverse prospecting, which takes us to this screen here, right, where it shows our property address and our MLS number, shows the interactions that agents have had with a particular contact. Okay, so this is the reverse prospecting list. There is one more way to access this, and I just want to show you that before I start to break down everything in these columns. Okay, so your other way of viewing it is anytime that you click on your own listing. I just clicked on the MLS number in this case. If we were to scroll down, you'll notice right here, reverse prospecting is also on your listing. And when you click on it, it looks the same, right? Just like how we were on the hit counter screen, we can go from hit counters to reverse prospecting, or whenever we're viewing our listing, right at the bottom near the other actions, you can just hit reverse prospecting as well. Okay, but here is the reverse prospecting results for this particular listing, 306. Okay, you'll notice in this case now you can start to see that they are in fact all interactions from 2018 on the test environment. Okay, and what we're able to tell straight away is first off the agent's name, right? So we can see which agent created a portal for their client. So already, right off the bat, that gives us a lot of information that we could work with. We know who set up that auto email or that portal. Okay. Next up, the reference number. This is one of the most important things on this screen, I'd say. The reference number is basically the contact that it was sent to. So Dan Mazzilli sent a portal which included our listing, North Service Road West, to this client, 12697. This is an individual that is a potential buyer. Well, I mean, I guess whether they're a potential buyer or not, we're going to talk about that further in a second. But, right, Dan Mazzilli sent it to this individual, which is a contact of Dan Mazzilli. Okay? So let's keep that in mind. The reference number, very, very important there. What I'm going to do is go right back to that contact screen that we had open here. So kind of course, I mean, you're just seeing the test ones that we made for at OMDREB.ca. You can see even myself and Brian all in this list here. But the important distinction to make here is an understanding that the very last thing on this list is the reference number, right? This is a contacts list. And if you notice, even myself here, Eric at OMDREB.ca, I am given a particular reference number, okay? That's what happens in this list here. For privacy reasons, the contact must stay anonymous, right? There definitely can't be a way for me to just reach out to Dan Mazzilli's client and ask them if they like our property, right? However, because this information is available, if I, right, like 12679, Dan knows who this is. This is going to refer to somebody right at a glance, right? If someone reaches out to me and tells me, hey, I saw that client 37961 had some genuine interest in my property, right? Were they looking to set up a showing? Did they want additional information? Start thinking about that, because that's kind of the direction we're going with this. Well, the agent that's representing them can very quickly find out who that was, and we can start a three-way conversation from a warm lead in this case. Okay, so let's just jump right back to that screen. Talk about a few more. We're definitely going to say some more words about that one momentarily here, but I'll just move over to now the count. Okay, really important number to understand what this means. So if you remember, Dan Mazzilli set up a portal for this client. Now what happened here and what this count is telling us is there were in fact a total of 12 listings that were sent to this client. Okay, our listing 243 North Service Road West is among those 12. So there's 11 other ones and then our property. Okay, really important there to understand and start to consider the count. And we're going to talk about this one more, especially because, I mean, have a look at this listing. This client has been sent over 1,000 listings. Okay, almost like a robot. So really important to kind of make note of this one, right? What I am thinking in this case, and determine this for yourself, kind of how you think this agent is working this. But something that's pretty common in the MLS system is some agents like to use the auto email service as a way to just stay up to date with different things that are jumping in and joining the market. So if I was to create an auto email, perhaps I even set myself as the contact in the auto email, well, I can send myself every active listing that hits the market for all of Halton, right? It could even have a larger area than all of Halton, like Oakville, Milton, Halton Hills could be even larger than that region. And I could be pushing every active listing right through to my email so I know when they come in and I can have a look at them, right? Technically, I can have a strategy there using an auto email to gauge the market. However you use that is up to you. However, I would be led to believe that Vanessa is doing something like that, that technically this client is probably not a buyer looking for a property, right? In their right mind, probably not going to send 1,300 listings to just one individual. There's got to be something more to it. So you're going to see these numbers from time to time. Just understand it's probably more like a market strategy. Keep an eye on the market, because you can use an auto email for anything you want, right? So let's, right? Another thing that might happen is, like, if you're working as part of a team, right? Maybe there's 2 or 3 of you all part of a team, and you choose to set up one of your assistants as the contact on an auto email where they can be notified of all the new things that hit the market, right? A lot of strategies can be built here. So just don't put too much bearing when you see these massive numbers. It's probably something like that. Okay, just understand that the count is actually how many listings the client was exposed to along with your property. Okay, so in this case, right, 12, Dan has sent this client 12 listings. Looks like a much more normal number, a much more normal portal. The client hasn't been bombarded, right? I would determine right away, this is probably not a client. This is probably a potential buyer. This is not a potential buyer. Okay, so just gauge with the ones that you're going to approach, right? You want to know that right away. We do also see next up here the date that it was sent out. Of course, these ones are all 2018. For yours, right, you'll be able to see the date that this client had been reached out to. When was this portal created? Really, really helpful. You can see how long ago that was. Maybe you give it a couple days, and if you don't hear from them, well, you could reach out at that point, something like that. Next up, we have a column here that's totally blank called the prospect interest indicator. What this is actually referring to is any favorites, any client possibilities. Here's where you would start to see the little heart or the little light bulb. It would show up right here, and you'd be able to tell if this client has shown genuine interest in the property. Okay, we're going to come back to that because we did, if you remember, on the single family residence, we did bring in a client favorite. So we'll talk about that in a second. We also have just the direct public information here on the MLS system. You're able to access Dan's preferred email if you ever had to reach out, and even as far as kind of brokerage information. And if I'm not mistaken, it probably is defaulted to kind of the office contact number. Okay, so a lot you can determine from this list. What I'm going to do now is we're going to go back to the listings, and we're going to do the reverse prospecting for a different one here. Go back to the hit counters if it'll let me. Okay, it looks like it's even zoomed in a little bit more than what we had before. However, yeah, let me just go back to the start. So we're going to go to my matrix. We're going to go to my listings, and perfect. This is what we wanted. Back to our hit counters screen, where, if you remember, there was the single family residence here, 1253 Sylvan Forest Drive, where we did have the opportunity to bring in a client favorite. So I'll show you what that looks like. But just remember, it's the one that has 111 portals. So you'll see the list is going to be much larger. I just didn't want to start the explanation there. You'll see it's massive. If we click on reverse prospecting, okay, we get to see that interaction straight away. It's like the top one here is the one that has a client favorite. So Jeff Johnson, right? Jeff Johnson's client was sent 73 different listings, and they chose to favorite our listing out of that portal that they were interacting with. Okay, that's significant, right? There might be an opportunity here. Other thing I want to show you, this is where you have the list of course, the 111 different interactions and client portals. If I make my way all the way to the bottom, we'll start to see those massive robotic numbers where right away, again, just remember, this is the client. I would expect that because they've been sent 1,500 listings, Stephanie is probably not using this as an actual potential buyer. It's probably a strategy to keep up with the market updates, okay, to know when active listings or whatever type of listing hits the market that meets her criteria. She just wants to be notified. So don't, if I saw a heart here, I probably would not choose that as an opportunity, right? Maybe it was a misclick or something like that, but if they've been sent 1,500, I mean, I guess you could investigate, but it's still like really, really does seem like this is very different. It's probably not a potential buyer, so just bear that in mind. Where this is maybe a little bit different, right? They've even been sent quite a few listings. 73, in my mind, seems kind of significant. This client has seen quite a few different properties, but I mean, in one sense, it kind of means, hey, like, it's even more genuine interest if they have seen this many, and ours was one of the ones that they were interested in, right? So that's where taking the numbers that you see in the hit counters, looking at this reverse prospecting screen, and then you can start to determine for yourself, hey, right, the client has seen 73 listings. This is the client's reference. This refers to an actual person that might be looking for a property right now. Well, based on the date, right, what if this had been sent? So today we're the 3rd of July 2020, right? What if this was in fact like July 1st, 2020, right? Well, we could see that 2 days ago in hypothetically, right? 2 days ago, Jeff's client showed interest, was on Canada Day. Maybe Jeff hasn't gotten to it. Totally up to you how you want to reach out and stuff like that. But the genuine interest in your property is what gives you that little bit of an edge, right? If you think about it, when you're a listing agent, so often you have active listings on the market. And even though you may be doing all that kind of stuff like the open houses and showings and things like that, I mean, there still is a little bit of an aspect where you are waiting for other agents, buyer representation to approach you, or potential buyers to approach you about your property. Well, looking at reverse prospecting, that's where you flip the switch a little bit. If it meets your business goals, you have sometimes an opportunity where you can reach out to the buyer representation. This buyer representation's client has shown interest in our listing. There might be an opportunity here to reach out to Jeff and investigate, right? You're not just calling Jeff out of the blue. Their client actually favorited our property, and Jeff can see that on his end. So it's gonna give us a bit of a foot through the door, right? Hey Jeff, right? Whether you call him, if you know him, maybe this is a colleague that you've worked with in the past, right? However you reach out with him, reach out to him. Email is available. You may be able to find out and investigate. Hey, again, your client has favorited my property amongst the other ones you sent to the portal. Have you had a chance to chat with them about it? Were you looking for additional information? When could we set up a showing? All that kind of stuff comes up. You have a warm lead that you can action right here in your reverse prospecting. So not to be overlooked, okay? All to do with whether that is an approach that you're comfortable with, but it's available to you, okay? So at this point, let's kind of backtrack a bit, have a look at that other screen. I want to make sure there wasn't anything else that I did want to mention on there. So let's go back to the My Listings. Okay, just remember, having a look at this screen, the way that hit counters and reverse prospecting tie into each other really has to do with, of course, how your listing is in fact performing on the market, right? As you saw the difference between the two of these are 111 interactions that agents actually had with individual clients, where this one had 12, okay? And we were able to go one step further, look into the client favorites, just like if we had some numbers here, right? Hopefully yours is lighting up like crazy. You've got, 3 favorites or 5 or maybe in the tens of favorites and possibilities, and you can actually reach out and start a plan for how you're going to approach these, for example, right? But all this stems for once you have active listings and you put them to work. Okay, so we did go over pretty well, including agent views, our hit counters, so how our listing's performing, and then when you choose it and you click on your reverse prospecting, you investigate even further how that interaction went down, how many listings the clients were sent, with yours being among them, and whether they chose to show genuine interest in the sense of, right now I'm just a client. If I was to hit this little heart and set this as a favorite, maybe I've read through, I really enjoy that it has this really nice pool in the back with a step down. Well, right, if I hit this and set a favorite, it's not only the just understanding, right? It's not only the buyer representation that gets to see that heart, you actually get to see that information for your own listings as well when you're the listing agent. Very, very important stuff. Okay. But yeah, that does really bring together all 3 of our categories here. If you remember, the 3 that we wanted to talk about was first, our portal notification settings, which is in My Matrix settings, portal notification settings. We followed that up with our hit counters, which is from My Matrix, My Listings, and then in the show list, you just go to your hit counters. And then we tied in the topic of using this information and bringing in the reverse prospecting. So when you go ahead and you select that, click your reverse prospecting, and you start to look at the interactions that the clients had in their portals, and whether it makes sense to use that as a marketing strategy. So you can reach out, you be a little proactive and reach out to this buyer representation that's been listed. Okay. With that, it does wrap up the advanced discussion for today. What I would like to, a couple last things I'd like to show you, of course. First, I always, I leave the ending for a question and answer period. So if there are any comments about the training, any questions that you have about the content, anything that you'd like me to go over and I could re-explain, I'm going to stick around for a little while. I'd be absolutely happy to answer any of the questions that might come up. One final thing that I will show you is, just in case you haven't seen before, just like today, I have recorded this session, okay? We're currently going through, we're going to be editing them and putting up all final cuts of our videos, but you do have access to our video training bank. Okay, so if you are interested in watching that at your own leisure, a couple different ways you can access it very, very easily here. Whenever you're on your home page or your dashboard for your matrix, you can click on any of these items that refer to the OMDREB website. So if I was to click on members area, it takes me to a familiar list here where we have our members area, and down the list, right? Video training bank. As soon as you select that, okay, you will see all of the different topics that we have, which are our OMDREB training webinars. This one today being the 3rd topic, Matrix Basics Advanced Matrix Discussion. If you go ahead and click on that, you can jump through here and see. Yeah, there you go. Sounds like me, right? So you can see the video at your own leisure. If there's a portion that you want to jump back to, maybe it was just, if you don't have any active listings right now, but you may end up having some next week kind of thing, and you just want to get a little refresher on what in the world we were talking about with reverse prospecting, well, just jump through the video, go to the section that's relevant to you, maybe rewatch that, right? You have access to all of the content that we've been recording and putting up as far as our OMDREB webinars. As well, our events department continues to add on all the ones that our speakers, whenever the speaker allows us to record, we've been putting these online. So you might even be able to find a really nice, important session that refers to something that you're very interested in. You can always rewatch them here. Okay, these are our professional development webinars, and also the matrix in the minute that Brian's been putting together with our communications team. Quite a few different items here that are quickly being added to this list. Just remember, it's the OMDREB website, members area, and you just make your way to the video training bank.